Okay, welcome to day two of this conference on the future of tropical economies. We had, I thought, a very interesting series of sessions yesterday, a lot of dynamics and a lot of information to digest, a lot of challenges. The logic of this conference, as I'm sure you've all worked out, is to deal with three quite vital headings as a part of the process of development in tropical economies, and yesterday we had quite an extensive look at environmental issues related to this, and of course a lot of challenges there, and you get this mix that keeps running through this conference of the good news and the not so good, and I think that's peppered right through the State of the Tropics report. We also spent some time looking at that very big question of human capital, how it's being used, how it's not being used, how it's not being harnessed, and there was a particular emphasis in that panel session on Indigenous issues in our own north in Australia. Obviously, the canvas is a very broad canvas that goes beyond this country, but nonetheless these are very meaty issues that we've had a little bite at. This morning we're going to go to the third of our umbrella issues, and that is the big one of the economy. The report will tell you of a certain amount of good news in terms of the growth of economies in the tropics. But it also points out the failures. So we'll tease that out a little more this morning, and then in our final session we're going to try and draw it all together and see what emerges from that. But first I want to again acknowledge the sponsors for their invaluable support and commitment to the conference. There's one slight program change in our final session, which is a straight discussion Q&A session. There's no sort of formal presentations, but Professor Comlesay will be replacing Graham Hugo. Now, if you're interested in attending an external site inspection of JCU, could you see the Aranex staff at what is left of the registration desk? I think it's moved inside. The tour will start at 1:45. Delegates will be required to meet outside the main entrance to this building, the Cairns Institute building. Delegates are also advised that bus transfers back to Paradise Palms and the Pullman Palm Cove will be departing the Cairns Institute at 2 o'clock. And now, our first guest this morning, our first guest speaker this morning is Deb Frecklington, the Assistant Minister to the Premier. Deb was raised on a beef cattle property, started her education at a small one-teacher school, completed a business degree at the University of Southern Queensland, and with her husband Jason she co-managed broadacre cropping properties while completing a Bachelor of Law at Queensland Institute of Technology. She was a partner in a law firm in Kingaroy before entering Parliament for the seat of Nanango at the last election. Pretty famous electorate, that one. I remember it well in my old days in Queensland. Would you please welcome Deb Frecklington.
Thank you very much, Kerry, and it is a wonderful part of the world to come from. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. First of all, it would be right and proper for me to acknowledge the traditional owners, those of you who are here with us today, both past and present. But in particular, I'd like to acknowledge Professor Sandra Harding and of course Kerry O'Brien. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I think there is quite a few of my colleagues that are meant to be here, but like Keith DeLacy just mentioned, some of them aren't ministers. They don't have to get up so early. I liked that comment. But also, obviously, to Mayor Bob Manning, it's wonderful to see you as well. But most importantly, to all ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and future presenters today, it's great to see you. And also to those of you who aren't from Queensland, I know this morning I've met someone from New Orleans. Welcome to Queensland. It's fantastic to have you here in our great state. This is a wonderful opportunity to open the second day of this conference. as obviously the future of tropical economies is of vital importance to Queensland. And I know the Treasurer, Tim Nicholls, spoke here on this topic yesterday. But almost 1 in 5 Queenslanders live in the tropics. And by 2036, it is predicted that Queensland's tropical population will swell from 845,000 as it stands today to just over 1.25 million people. So that's an increase of 50%. But that's not the only reason why the tropics are of an interest to us. As the Treasurer said yesterday, the science and practical know-how of Queenslanders, born out of living and working in the tropics, is being tapped to develop our own economy to improve life in other tropical economies. Queensland is therefore uniquely positioned to be a leader in tropical health, tropical agriculture and tropical construction and design. This morning I'm going to talk a little more about one of those areas, such as agriculture, but then I'm going to share with you Queensland's 30-year vision in the Queensland Plan and how we move forward with that 30-year vision and how that will have potential benefits for tropical economies. But firstly, I'd like to talk to you about Queensland's most important agricultural industry, and whenever I get an opportunity to speak, I always like to mention Queensland's beef industry and how it will play a bigger role, particularly for today's topic, in the tropical economies. Each year, Queensland produces over 1 million tonnes of beef with a gross value production of just sitting over $3.25 billion. So grazing occurs on over 80% of Queensland, and it's our state's largest land use. So right now in Queensland, and certainly from areas like where I'm from, times are really tough. We've got a combination of high debt levels, we've got poor herd productivity and high business overheads. And not only that, here in Queensland we sit with around 75% of our state being drought declared. As Kerry mentioned in his introduction, I did grow up on a beef cattle property at a small place called Galoogabar, so I have always taken a really strong interest in this beef industry. And also, obviously, Nanango, the area that I now represent, is one of the best mixed cropping and beef cattle property, areas in our state. So therefore, improving productivity, especially calving rates in our northern beef, will have long-term benefits for a number of tropical economies. The heat-tolerant, tick-resistant Brahman is something that the Queensland beef industry has always used as its backbone. But we now have in Queensland one beef pioneer in Ewan Murdoch, and this is really exciting because what we believe in the state here is this may come to address some of the Brahman's downsides, such as fertility and meat quality. Ewan Murdoch is using genetics to develop an Angus Brahman mix called Ultra Blacks, which he hopes will transform Northern Australia's $5 billion beef industry. Already great interest has been shown from other countries, and last year a group of delegates from Colombia visited Queensland to check out the Ultra Blacks. Colombian conditions are very similar to those that we have here in Northern Australia, with producers operating in cycles from very wet to very dry, with Brahmans the genetic base of their herds as well. Colombia has 23 million head of cattle and 45 million people who consume almost all of the Colombian beef. Colombia therefore also imports in from USA and Canada to supply the needs of its restaurant and high-end retail sector. So clearly the improvement in quality and productivity from the Angus side is very important to a tropical country such as Colombia. So we'll follow with great interest the development of this Ultra Blacks breed, which could make a big difference to not only to our beef industry but also to tropical economies looking for ways to feed their fastly growing populations. And the Queensland Government will continue to invest in beef cattle research. And by this, the Spyglass Beef Research Facility north of Charters Towers is currently now being transformed from a commercial beef operation to a research facility. And this facility is already playing a major role in beef cattle research in areas such as studying new selection tools for genetic improvement, the impact of calf hydration and the application of remote technology for herd management. But not only in beef cattle, Queensland is certainly making great strides in developing and researching in tropical pulses, We have high-protein bananas, drought-proof rice, which we're working on, and a variety of corn that combats disease. And so that's just to name a few in that agricultural space. But as you know, today's conference is a direct result of the State of Tropics report. And I'd really like to congratulate JCU, and in particular Professor Sandra Harding, for their leadership and in partnering with 11 other institutions to produce that landmark report. So whilst at JCU have been leaders in producing such an amazing report, what we have done as the State of Queensland is produced a document of where we want to be in 30 years' time, and that's what we've called the Queensland Plan. The Queensland Plan is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to look beyond our election cycle, so that 3-year cycle, and look beyond the what's in it for me mentality, and come up with a shared vision for the 30 years into the future. So in all, and amazingly, over 80,000 Queenslanders had direct input into our Queensland Plan. So that ranged from community events to local meetings to major summits in Mackay and in Brisbane. So we had online forums, email discussions and even snail mail. The final Queensland Plan was released by Premier Campbell Newman 7 weeks ago in Hervey Bay, and it set a number of targets. But just condensed down to 4 targets. They are that all Queenslanders enter adulthood with life skills and broad knowledge. All Queenslanders are highly satisfied with the livability of their region. And Queensland leads Australia in improving mental health and wellbeing. And Queensland is recognised as a world leader in environmental management and protection. Another strong direction that came out of the Queensland Plan that is extremely relevant for myself is that we wish to double the amount of people that's living outside of the southeast corner in 30 years. We want to see our regions developed with jobs and infrastructure that some people say are only currently available in that southeast corner. So in many ways, this is a massive challenge for Queensland, and it's very similar to the challenge for the tropics as a whole. We need to bring better education, better health, better job opportunities, better infrastructure to our regional and remote parts of the state. And here in Queensland, we particularly understand the tyranny of distance. So therefore, doubling the population outside of this southeast corner in the next 30 years is a huge challenge, but it's something that we as a government are taking extremely seriously. We're enshrining the Queensland Plan into legislation so that its targets and goals will be at the forefront of all state and local government decisions, well beyond the life of any government. One of the key initiatives that we as a government have also done on the back of, or leading into the Queensland Plan is Regions Q. And I actually noticed there's some documents out there, so for those of you who don't have enough paperwork, you need to pick up one of those Regions Q's document and have a good look at it. Because this Regions Q is a framework for how we can supercharge our regional economies. Regions Q has identified 9 projects of regional significance, and significantly for today's conference, 5 of those are situated here in the Queensland Tropics. These include the Gulf Rivers Agricultural Zone, the Burdekin Catchment Development, the Northwest Minerals Province, the Galilee Basin Development Area, and the Cairns Airport Aviation and Commercial Precinct. They certainly underline the Queensland's government commitment to developing this end of Australia. So one of the priorities under the Regions Q framework is obviously attracting and retaining people into these regions. So therefore we say the lack of health services is also one of the big stumbling blocks that we see into the rural and regional areas. So here in Queensland, we've developed telehealth into over 200 of our regional hospitals. Where previously people have had to travel to be seen by a specialist, they can now do it via video conferencing, sitting in their own community. And on this point, if I can just diverge, just yesterday, I apologise, actually it was the day before, I was at ESC Hospital, which is a small regional hospital in my area with the Health Minister, Lawrence Springbrook. And we sat there where a lady in a pink, she'd probably hate me saying this, but she was sitting there in her slippers, her pink dressing gown, and she was sitting in front of a little TV screen, and it was as clear as day. And she was talking to her liver specialist, and it was amazing. It was just like the doctor was sitting just in the room. And the other thing that was interesting is that liver specialist was actually sitting in another small regional community called Laidley. So not only are we doing everything we can to ensure that our regional communities have access to the best health facilities, but we're ensuring that our people that are actually providing that advice can be anywhere that they wish to be in our great state as well. So whilst we strive to hit the targets in the Queensland Plan, we will have much to share with other states and nations located in the tropics. How we bring about better education, better health, better job opportunities and better infrastructure to our regional and rural parts of the state will be a blueprint for all people located in that special part of the planet that obviously sits between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Our goal in Queensland is to lift productivity in a way that sustains economic growth, improves living standards and balances the needs of our natural environment. This is a shared goal with developing and emerging nations from across our tropical zones. Queensland has much to offer the tropics, and we look forward to partnering with many of you in ways to make life in our regions much better. So enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you very much for your time this morning, and have a great time in Cairns. Thank you.